I'm from Spot UAE. He's going to talk about parking talk, why it does matters. Welcome, Mohammad.
Good afternoon. So I will be extending the discussion about the smart traffic, but I'll take it from a different perspective, from parking perspective and what's the role of parking within the smart traffic and smart thinking. So why it does matter? Why it's really parking it does matter, and we are talking about parking. So Donald Trump, the author of The High Cost of Free Parking, he spent almost all of his life trying to understand the parking phenomena and how it works. And he said even a small amount of search time per car will create a huge and surprising amount of traffic congestion. And let's take this example. Let's take a congested downtown with only 3 minutes search time. We have a turning over rate of 10 cars per person per day. We have only 33 spaces. With simple calculation, this will give us a 30-minute cruising per car per day. This can scale up to around 6,000 hours, which is 250 days per that block per year. It's a huge amount of time to be wasted for searching for a parking. It's not only time, it's also distance. So if we do the same calculation, assuming the average cruising time is 20 kilometers per hour, we will end up with around 120,000 vehicle kilo traveled per block per year. And this distance literally can take us more than 2 trips around the earth. It's not 3 minutes search time, it's even worse. It is 11.5 minutes in Cambridge, 8 minutes in Washington, 6.5 in Sydney, maybe around 6 minutes in Abu Dhabi also. So it does really matter, because it's increased the distance traveled, it's increased the fuel consumption, it's increased the pollution, and it's wasting for our time. So what we are looking after? We are looking after eliminating cruising and achieving zero search time. And again, from Donald Trump, he said if you want to achieve zero search time, achieve 15% curb space vacancy rate. So that's simple. So the whole story is simple. We want zero search time, we can achieve it by 15% vacancy rate. So the question, how to achieve this vacancy rate? A simple answer and the direct and traditional answer is to supply more. And this is what we face always in our business. So the simple answer from public is supply more, so you can reduce the pressure from the demand and you achieve your vacancy rate. But is it really the correct answer? If we are looking to the issue from only the symptoms, this could be the answer. But if we want to dig deeper in the reasons, that might be even the opposite answer to what is the solution. And this is what also has been researched. And Todd Littman, he described it as the supply paradox. So the supply paradox, that when you supply more parking, you increase the vehicle use, cruising parking demand and parking supply to maintain equilibrium. And when capacity increase, the peak period also increase until capacity is limited again and enter again another circle of supply-demand relationship. So what is the problem really? So we need to understand the problem. So what's the problem in this situation? And this is what we'll try to find out. Before we talk more about the cause and the issue, what is parking? Because we are missing really the point about parking. Parking is to support the mode of transport. And this is a very simple and important question and answer, because it will lead us to the first and the really real cause of parking problem. It is the transportation system. It is the mode share, the mode split. The mode split can define our parking need and our parking problem. Most of our transportation system in this region is a car dependency, maybe 70% or even more, using a private car, and the rest is divided between public buses, taxi, and some walking and cycling. So we are talking about alternative, and we are trying to substitute driving by other modes and by different mode of transport. And when we talk about substitute, we are talking about demand and supply. The typical example and traditional example is a substitute between Coca-Cola and Pepsi, two products. They give us this similar product. So if we increase the price of Coca-Cola, it's expected to reduce the demand, the quantity demand for Coca-Cola, but in return, on the opposite, we will have a higher demand on Pepsi and pushing the demand curve toward Pepsi. So this is between Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Is it the same situation between car and alternative modes? So if we increase the price of car through parking, for example, and parking prices, are we getting the same return in pushing people to a different alternative? The answer is different from city to city and from different system to different system. But this is what we really need to look after and to try to understand our special case. So substituting and then, understanding the elasticity between price and the quantity. So is it really perfect elastic? We can increase the price whatever we want and then push people to different alternative, or it is perfect inelastic, or it is somewhere in between. And in most cases it will be somewhere in between. And this is where we really need to understand. So again, the same question, what's the problem? We have what's the problem, and we have different way of thinking. The first answer is what we can see here is a too little spaces. And this is a typical answer. And this will drive us to what we need to do. But a different answer can be there is too much cars. Two different answer, but it will give us a totally different way and approach of solving the issue and looking to the problem. So from Abu Dhabi case, before I move forward to how to solve this issue, from Abu Dhabi problem we have identified this issue as a core problems for the car parking in Abu Dhabi. The first one is car dependency, the travel mode preference, lack of public transfer, shortage in parking supply, land use mix, and the absence of parking management, and that was prior to applying Mawaqif, the parking management in Abu Dhabi. So it is with the same idea about more cars, and also we have maybe too few spaces. So it is a combination of both. So the parking problems, if we want to make it more simple and more strategic thinking, can be the supply quantity, can be the supply management, or over demand. So if it is a supply quantity, we have too few spaces and we need to build more. If it is a supply management, we have the enough spaces, but it's not being managed properly. Or it could be an over demand and we have too much car on the street. So how it works? As I started the presentation, the final product we are getting from parking is the cruising. So what we are really after is to eliminate cruising, and this is the final things that we will get from parking. Why we need a parking space? So we have different land uses which generate parking demand, and we have different mobility options to serve this demand. This is one side. The other side, we have the supply, we have different demand management, and we have different turnover and duration of stay. These two parts of equation will work together, and the final result will be cruising. So if we have high cruising time, meaning high cruising distance, this will affect our network, will affect the traffic safety, will affect the network speed, and will increase pollution and noise. So is it also another question always came out? Is it really a big problem? It's only limited within the downtown or within the parking space area, but actually it does not. And just I want to highlight that some research shows that maybe 30% of the traffic within CBD is searching for parking. And many other researchers are trying to see to what extent this problem can scale up. And such Nicholas from Urban Transport System Laboratory, he claimed that cruising reduced the output of the system because the average trip length will be increased, and it can be scaled up to drive a whole CBD to enter saturated regime. So it is really a problem and issue for the whole traffic system. And to have a clear vision or a clear approach how we can solve this problem, we will refer it again also to the root causes, which we try to mention. So the strategy approach can take also 3 streams: an optimal demand, an effective supply, and effective control. So the optimal demand, there is an over demand and should not be encouraged. The effective supply, we need to find a way to supply the right quantity and the right way of supplying. And in terms of effective control, we need to have the right and effective control measures. So what we mean by optimal demand? So optimal demand means we have too much car. And to understand this one, the whole mobility is a derived demand, and parking also a derived demand. That means we don't park for the sake of parking, and we don't travel for the sake of traveling. We travel to participate in different activities. And when we park our car also, there is a reason for our parking. And there is two reasons only. So if we park our car at our home, that means the reason is car ownership, because we own this car. But if we park it away from our home, that means we are depending in our car, in our travel. So this is a very important aspect to understand the root cause of parking. So optimal demand. So we are trying to solve these two issues: the car ownership and the car dependency. And this can be done by having the right mix. And the right mix can be done either by changing the mode share, or either by changing the road share and enhancing the other alternatives. And this can be done by the active transport, by the public transport, or by the new concept of car sharing and carpooling. And this will lead us also to the next optimal demand measure, which is the changing the mobility perspective, which we have here today and many times, the mobility as service. So we are trying to push the perspective of car ownership to more on-demand service and on-demand use, and many initiatives are being used now, and it will scale up and be used more popular. Effective supply. With effective supply, we have different perspectives. So the first question is how much to supply, and this is a different story. But now in terms how to supply, we are always, when we look to parking supply, we have something about land value paradox, especially in the downtown. So in the downtown, we are trying to maximize the benefit of each land or of each vacant spot by maximizing the height of the building. But you can see within this, maximization, you can see a very same size of the plot occupied by very limited number of cars, and this just doesn't work. And some research also show that, for example, in New York downtown, that 31% of the New York City commercial downtown are devoted for parking. So we need to have an innovation thinking in parking supply. And remember always that parking is just a storage area. So we need to utilize parking within space, but really without losing the space, and this can be done by these such of initiatives, the automated car parking, or using the underground parking, and on top of parking use it for public realm. And keep these spaces for others who need the space more. With effective supply, we need to understand that parking demand is a peak demand, similar to the traffic demand, which is also a peak demand. So if it is a peak demand, no need really to supply on site. We can supply it somewhere else and just provide the service. Effective control. Effective control, I will start with the pioneer example of SF Park, San Francisco Park example, where they have started the dynamic pricing concept. And their intention was to achieve an optimized occupancy and optimal occupancy. So what they mean by optimized occupancy, they give this example, and they said before SF Park, they have a congested downtown where there is no spaces, no one space, open space, and surrounding to this congested downtown, they have an underutilization area. So by applying dynamic pricing, they can shift demand and move demand from the congested downtown to the underutilized area, which is also surrounded to that downtown, and achieving a better system for all. So effective control or the dynamic pricing, this all will take us to the dynamic and real-time data, which we had just seen from Qatar. And the whole idea is actually to change the way we are thinking on planning. So the current traditional way of planning and modeling is predict and provide. So we predict the number of cars that will be demanded, and we plan to provide parking structure and parking spaces for that number, and the same things for cars. The different way of thinking that we predict and we plan to control, and then we monitor and control in a real-time base. So monitoring will replace prediction, and the system is repeatedly modified based on observation. By doing that, we can achieve and optimize occupancy through dynamic management, and one of them is the pricing. So the parking system will be equipped by sensors or whatever that can provide an information to the management, who can take a decision on pricing and other aspects, and again deliver it to the users, and the users will be in a better way to do a decisions, and that decisions can be either choose the time of visiting that area, or choose the space that they will go to, or even choice on the mode and changing of the mode of transport. With effective control also, we can stop searching and enable guidance. It's not always about not having the right quantity. Sometimes we have the right quantity, but we don't know where is it. We don't know where is the free spaces. So again, we need a parking system that can give information to the management, who can give it back to the users, and again, repeat the same process. So that was about the solution for parking problems. But what I will talk now about the future. So we are facing a mobility disruption, as described by Tony Seba. He is the author of Clean Disruption book. And he said that parking future also is part of the mobility future, and it is clear. So, okay, before we talk about the future, let's realize a very important fact, that 97% or 95 to 97% of cars' life is spent park. And this really make it very hard for Donald in his book to understand why people they own car. What is the economical rational or understanding that if they use it only for 3% or 5% of the car time life. So that means are we really attached to the car? This is just what he's trying to say. And let's see what is the future is coming with. So we talk about the on-demand or the mobility as service, the current service what we have. So what we have in the future, we have the same service but with autonomous. So we will have on-demand autonomous vehicle. And what does that mean? That means you can order your car, the car will come, pick you, and to take you to your destination, and on the way, maybe it will take some other users with you, drop you to your destination, and disappear. And this will put a big question mark about parking and the parking requirement in the future. So researchers also try to understand what will happen to parking in the future. Mary Smith, she's from Walker Parking. She's, I think, 40 years now working just providing parking. So she is a designer for a parking structure. So her business is to do a parking. So she's trying also to understand what is the future of their business. So based on some study in the US, she said and she predicted that with the SDV, the self-driving vehicles entering the market, 50% potential decline in car ownership. And this will result in a 40% potential decline in parking demand. And the post-parking requirement city will be a more compacted city, will be a less automobile-dependent city. And it is not easy to change. This is very important to highlight. But it will take time, and it will be a hard habit to break. But city will grow slowly and will change slowly. So the question is, how long will the transition take? And this is really the debate, and this is the debate before the lunchtime. Like, this is the future, but how long the future will take? So again, I will go back again to Tony Seba. So Tony Seba, in his book and in all of his presentation, he tried to show the transition or the change from horse to the car and the horsepower. And he showed a very interesting example and very interesting photo. This is the Fifth Avenue of New York City in 1900. And he's asking, where's the car? So if you look to this photo, you can see a lot of horses and maybe one or two cars that he tried to put a circle around it. The same avenue, different photo, after 13 years only, but he's asking a different question, and he's saying, where's the horse? So it takes only 13 years to change the whole situation. So this again raises the question, how long will the transition take? And we know that the market now is full with all of these autonomous vehicle trials. But again, to highlight this idea, this cartoon or this caricature from a newspaper in the 1900s, this shows the devil machine, the future machine from their perspective, the car, and it is showing the fear of the public from what is coming. And this is what is now our fear from the autonomous vehicle. So to explain this situation, the journey from horse to horsepower, it took 50 years. It started in 1500, but only in the 1900 it is started to grow 4,000 vehicles. But 12 years later, or the 13 years from Tony Seba example, around 350 cars. So what does that mean? That means the innovation and improvement of any new technology will take a long time, a very long time. But once it is commercially available, safe and affordable, this is the most important. The disruption or entering the market will not take much time. So this is actually the whole of what I want to present. I'll just keep the last slide for a quick video from Abu Dhabi, how with very minor change in the parking management, but how it was changed from nothing to now a better situation with a very minimum management scheme.
مع خدمة ميم مواقف يمكنك استخدام هاتفك المتحرك لتسديد رسوم مواقف.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for Mohammad?